about you day and night. It's only right to think about the girl you love and hold her tight. So happy together. If I should call you up, invest a dime, and you say you belong to me, and ease my mind, imagine how the world could be so very fine, so happy together.
Good evening. Tonight we are going to be diving into the world of F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. Set in the Roaring '20s in New York City, Nick Carraway takes us on a journey to discover more about his mysterious and wealthy neighbor, Jay Gatsby.
F. Scott Fitzgerald was born on September 24, 1896, in St. Paul, Minnesota. His first novel success made him famous and let him marry the woman he loved. But he later descended into drinking, and his wife had a mental breakdown. This plays a part in The Great Gatsby's societal influence. In the book, being high in society and rich was the only way you could marry the woman you loved. However, drinking also had some influence in this book. The characters were influenced by drinking of other characters. For example, Tom Cruise led Daisy to become upset with him all the time. In 1917, Fitzgerald dropped out of school and joined the U.S. Army. He later met a young girl in which he fell in love with. In the book, Gatsby drops out of school and later decides to join the army and falls in love with Daisy.
This may lead the reader to compare Fitzgerald's life with the main character, Jay Gatsby.
No matter how they toss the dice.
Was in fact the flapper. A flapper is a young woman with bobbed hair and short skirts who drink and smoke. The Great Gatsby is a great representation of the Roaring '20s and is thought by many Americans to be the best American novel ever written. It has a variety of different characters that have different places in society. Do you agree that it's the greatest American novel ever written? The Roaring '20s were a time of dramatic social and political change. The growing wealth of the '20s led Americans to the birth of a new mass culture, ranging from buying the same goods to listening to the same music to dancing the same dances and using the same slang. However, some people were uncomfortable with this new mass culture, causing them to have more conflict than wealth. The most prominent symbol in the Roaring '20s, in fact.
New York, 1922. The tempo of the city had changed sharply. The buildings were higher. The parties were bigger. The morals were looser and the liquor was cheaper. The restlessness approached hysteria.
Shall we?
Who is this Gatsby?
Do you know him?
Oh, you Mr. Gatsby doesn't exist.
Gatsby? What Gatsby?
I beg your pardon. Mr. Gatsby would like to speak to you. Alone.
I'm certainly glad to see you again.
I'm certainly glad to see you as well. When I make the pleasure of Mr. Gatsby's acquaintance, I discovered a man of fine breeding.
Very interesting. Everything all right?
Oh, yes.
Love is blindness. I don't wanna see. Won't you wrap the night?
You always look so cool. The man in the cool, beautiful shirts.
She has to tell him she never loved him. Love is clock.
I've just heard the most shocking thing. It all makes sense.
Will you come home, sport? We need you.
I wish we could just run away.
Mr. Gatsby, sir.
Love is blindness. I don't wanna see. Won't you wrap the night around me?
What kind of a row?
Great Gatsby starts off with Nick Carraway, who moves to New York City for the summer of 1922 to have experience in the bond business. He ends up renting a house in the West Egg, which is referred to as the district in Long Island. There is the West Egg and the East Egg. The West Egg is where the newly rich live who have yet to make social connections and display their wealth without thought. Nick later discovers all about his mysterious neighbor, Jay Gatsby. Gatsby owns a Gothic mansion and throws extravagant parties every night. Nick is unlike the other people who live in the West Egg. He has social connections with the people in the East Egg. The East Egg is where the more wealthy and established people live. Nick has a cousin named Daisy who is married to one of his best friends from Yale, Tom Buchanan. The two introduce Nick to a woman named Jordan Baker, in which Nick develops a romantic relationship with. Jordan admits to Nick that Tom has a lover, Myrtle Wilson. This, of course, causes stress in Daisy's life. Nick does not approve of Tom's decisions, but plays along with it anyway. Myrtle Wilson lives in what is called the Valley of Ashes, which is a gray industrial dumping ground between the West Egg and New York City. Nick travels with Tom to visit Myrtle, and they go to their gaudy apartment in which they used to hide their affair. Myrtle begins to taunt Tom about Daisy, which results in a broken nose from Tom. As the summer progresses, Nick eventually gets invited to one of Gatsby's parties. Nick finds Jordan Baker there, and they meet Gatsby together. Gatsby and Jordan talk to each other, and Nick finds out that Gatsby has met Daisy through Jordan. In fact, Gatsby and Daisy met in Louisville in 1917 and is deeply in love with her. He spends many nights staring at the green light on her dock across from his mansion. Gatsby's extravagant parties are simply a way to impress her. Gatsby then asks Nick to arrange a reunion with Daisy and Gatsby, but Gatsby is worried that Daisy will refuse to see him if she finds out that Gatsby is still in love with her. After an awkward reunion, Daisy and Gatsby fall in love again and start an affair. After a short time, Tom grows increasingly suspicious of his wife's relationship with Gatsby. At a luncheon at the Buchanan's house, Gatsby stares at Daisy with such an undisguised passion that Tom realizes Gatsby is in love with her. Though Tom is himself involved in an extramarital affair, he is deeply outraged by the thought that his wife could be unfaithful to him. He forces the group to drive into New York City, where he confronts Gatsby in a suite at the Plaza Hotel. Tom asserts that he and Daisy have a history that Gatsby could never understand, and he announces to his wife that Gatsby is a criminal who gets his fortunes come from bootlegging alcohol and other illegal activities. Daisy realizes that her allegiance is to Tom, and Tom contemptuously sends her back to the East Egg with Gatsby, attempting to prove to Gatsby that he cannot hurt him. When Nick, Jordan, and Tom drive through the Valley of Ashes, however, they discover that Gatsby's car has struck and killed Myrtle Wilson, Tom's lover. They rush back to Long Island, where Nick learns from Gatsby that Daisy was driving the car when it struck Myrtle, but Gatsby intends to take the blame. The next day, Tom tells Myrtle's husband, George, that Gatsby was the driver of the car. George, who has led to the conclusion that driver of the car that killed Myrtle has been her lover, which, assuming Gatsby is her lover, he finds Gatsby in the pool at his mansion and shoots him dead, and then shoots himself. Nick stages a small funeral for Gatsby, ends his relationship with Jordan, and moves back to the Midwest to escape the disgust he feels for the people surrounding Gatsby's life and for the emptiness and moral decay of life among the wealthy on the East Coast. Nick reflects that just as Gatsby's dream of Daisy was corrupted by money and dishonesty, the American dream of happiness and individualism has disintegrated into the mere pursuit of wealth. Though Gatsby's power to transform his dreams into reality is what makes him great, Nick reflects that the era of dreaming both Gatsby's dream and the American dream is over.
A major theme in The Great Gatsby is the American dream. The American dream was described by James Truesdell Adams in his book, The Epic of America, as that dream of a land in which life should be better and richer and fuller for everyone, with opportunity for each according to ability or achievement. But what is the American dream really? In Fitzgerald's novel, The Great Gatsby, the American dream is turned into a pursuit of materialism and selfish intentions. The American dream is achieved through success, and success is achieved through wealth. The wealth that Gatsby has in the book was obtained through con. His background makes him the envy of those who do not have the chance of achieving their own dream.
It's only right to think.
See, he cried triumphantly. It's a bona fide piece of printed matter. It fooled me. This fellow's a regular Belasco. It's a triumph. What thoroughness! What realism! Knew when to stop, too. Didn't cut the pages. But what do you want? What do you expect?
In this time period, books came with the pages uncut, meaning the sheets of pages folded to make the books are not yet sliced open at the top. So, if you had not read the book, people would know. Gatsby's uncut books reveal his disguise. He presents himself as a well-educated man, but in reality, Gatsby is only a fraud. Gatsby's uncut, unread books could also be a representation of Gatsby himself being eternally mysterious and eternally unopened. The color blue often stands for relaxation and peace. In The Great Gatsby, however, the color blue represents Gatsby's illusions. The color blue is around Gatsby significantly more than any other character in the book. His gardens are blue, his chauffeur wears blue, and the water separating him from Daisy is known as his blue lawn. But we have to keep in mind that the eyes of T.J. Eichelberg are also blue. If blue represents illusions and alternatives to reality, maybe that makes the eyes of God into a non-existent dream. The eyes of Dr. T.J. Eichelberg are not to go unnoticed in this novel. There is a billboard outside the apartment of Tom and Myrtle's apartment with the face of Dr. T.J. Eichelberg on it. Nick notes the eyes again, keeping a watchful vigil, and then George takes Myrtle to the window, from which we know the billboard is visible, and tells her that she can't fool God. Wilson makes the same connection when he says the eyes of T.J. Eichelberg are always watching, and so are the eyes of God. T.J. Eichelberg is, in this sense, a Christ figure in The Great Gatsby. But religion is not an important part of this novel, so Fitzgerald could be hinting that God has been replaced by capitalism, representing God through an advertisement. Nick Carraway plays a major role in The Great Gatsby. He is very plain, straightforward, and honest, but ends up being the most interesting character in the book. He grew up in a prominent family in the city of Chicago. Nick attended Yale and describes himself as a well-rounded man. He fought in World War I and is now living in the East Egg of New York City, working in the bond.
If I should call you up, investor done.
I will tell you God's truth. God's truth about myself. I am the son of some very wealthy people. Sadly, they're all dead now. I live in all the capitals of Europe, collecting jewels, hunting big game, painting a little bit. And came the war, old sport. Every allied government gave me a decoration.
Major J. Gatsby for valor extraordinary.
That's right.
Could it all be true? Gatsby. He had an extraordinary sense of hope, but I had the uneasy feeling that he was guarding secrets.
Gatsby. I'd like to know who he is and what he does.
Gatsby? What Gatsby?
My boss.
Mr. Carraway, this is my good friend, Mr. Maya Wolfshire.
I understand you're looking for a business connection.
Happens to be confidential. You understand?
I'm certainly glad to see you again.
I think about you day and night. It's only right. I'm certainly glad to see you as well. So happy together.
I wish we could just run away. I've just heard the most shocking thing.
You and me!
It all makes
Nick's neighbor, Jay Gatsby, is a mysterious man. He is very wealthy and comes off as a well-educated man, but in reality is not educated at all. Jay Gatsby was not born a millionaire. However, he made his fortune off sketchy business deals. Mr. Gatsby is in love with Daisy, and his love is what leads him to reinvent himself. And even though his fortune is built off of nothing but lies, Nick still sees him as the only real person in a crowd of fakes. This leads to the representation of what love is. Love leads one to reinvent themselves. When he admits his love for Daisy, he is a new person and reinvents himself. So where water would normally be considered as reinventing a new life, love acts as the way a character reinvents themselves. Money also leads to the achievement of love. Gatsby's main motivation for becoming wealthy was so he could achieve Daisy's love. Gatsby is the subject of a whirlwind of gossip throughout New York and is already a kind of legendary celebrity before he is ever introduced to the reader. Fitzgerald propels the novel forward through the early chapters by shrouding Gatsby's background and the source of his wealth in mystery. The reader's first distant impressions of Gatsby strike quite a different note from that of the lovesick, naive young man who emerges during the later part of the novel. Gatsby's approach to life is what creates his personality. Gatsby literally creates his own character by changing his name from James Gatz to Jay Gatsby to reinvent himself. As a result of his love for Daisy, Gatsby has the ability to transform his hopes and dreams into reality. His talent for self-invention is what creates his greatness. His title of The Great Gatsby refers to the Great Houdini, suggesting that Gatsby is simply a masterful illusion.
Myrtle Wilson is not the brightest of characters. She falls for Tom after the somewhat brutal meeting on the train. She is married to George Wilson and is not happy with the social class she was born into. She is trying to rise above her social class through Tom. She is much like Gatsby in this aspect, but she is only a ridiculous fool, while Gatsby is working through his love.
Tom Buchanan is a sturdy, straw-haired man of 30 with a rather hard mouth and a supercilious manner. Two shining, arrogant eyes had established dominance over his face and gave him the appearance of always leaning aggressively forward. You could see a great pack of muscles shifting when his shoulder moved under his thin coat. It was a body capable of enormous leverage, a cruel body. Tom is married to Daisy, but is having an affair with Myrtle Wilson.
Daisy Buchanan is the wealthy cousin of Nick Carraway, and the object of Jay Gatsby's affection. Daisy is married to Tom Buchanan, who doesn't really love her. Daisy is very childish in her views on love. In the end, she lets Tom make the decision on who she should marry. Fitzgerald's tone and diction in The Great Gatsby is not to go unnoticed. The author creates a variety of tones in order to evaluate the abundance of personalities within each character. Fitzgerald uses diction in order to reveal the mystery within characters. For example, Jay Gatsby. Gatsby uses the words old sport, which creates a more friendly attitude that you would expect, and later leads up to his mysterious background.
Now that you have experienced the world of F. Scott Fitzgerald and his novel, The Great Gatsby, you can see how dynamic in characters and how much influence the historical events, the author himself, and the controversial American dream have on the novel The Great Gatsby. Perhaps this is what makes The Great Gatsby the greatest American novel ever written. Thank you, and good night.
So happy.